please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18. Now back home on the Lal Street, the Sensex and the Nifty made a smart recovery in the final hour of trade to close more or less flattish. The Nifty mid-cap index, that was a relative outperformer, and the key indices, while in fact the banks were under pressure, dragged lower by the two big boys, ICICI Bank as well as HDFC Bank. But how the Qs stacked up this morning, Anisha, tell us, run us through your reading of the trade data.
Well, yes, Nigel. First, to start up, what happened last week, the Sensex and the Nifty actually managed to gain around 0.6% in the last week. The Nifty mid-cap space, actually, that was coming under a bit of pressure earlier, saw a bit of recovery last week because Nifty Junior, for example, was up around 1%. But the Bank Nifty came under a bit of pressure. That one was down about 1% for the week. If we're talking about the Qs from the volumes front, we have the FIIs that sold around 220 crores in the cash market, while the DIIs, they continue to pump in money. They had an inflow from 460 crores into the cash market. We have seen steady inflows into the MF world as well, and that is perhaps what we are seeing into the DIs as well. Now, interestingly, it was a very interesting week for the rupee because the rupee ended at 67.50 versus Thursday's close of 67.12. In fact, for the week, it fell around 0.7%, the first weekly fall that we have seen against the dollar over the last 3 weeks. So that's one important bit to watch out for today, what happens in the rupee and the currency world. If you're talking about the global Qs, well, Asia and Europe ended a bit lower when it comes to Friday, but US markets, they ended in the green. The Dow was up around 75 points and the S&P as well as Nasdaq were able to register some minor gains as far as the index goes. Now, the shares of Apple actually dropped 1%, and that after there were some reports that the company is actually warning its suppliers that there's going to be a sharp decline in its spare orders, and that's the reason we saw the reaction to the Apple stocks. But overall, the gains in the US markets were capped because of the trade tensions. Now, remember, there was a G7 meeting that was going on over the weekend where Mr. Donald Trump left in early for the important summit in Singapore, where both the leaders have already arrived, and that's the most important cue to watch out for today, that the US-North Korea meet is set up for tomorrow. Other than that, FOMC meeting is due on Wednesday. The street is expecting a rate hike there. The other important cues lined up for the week, we have the ECB as well as Bank of Japan meeting later in the week. We have the IIP, CPI as well as WPI data that we are watching out for. Crude will be very important because remember, OPEC meeting is lined up for June 22nd and Qs can come before that as well, so we'll watch out for that. Of course, progress of monsoon is something that we have an eye out as far as Mumbai goes. So the most important Qs coming globally, and as far as the Nifty is concerned, the important levels to watch out for on the upside is of course 10,800 as well as 10,850. On the lower side, we have Friday's lows of around 10,710 that we'll keenly watch out for, Nigel.
Okay, all right. So those are the important levels you should be keeping an eye out for in today's trading session. But Anisha, what are the stocks we're focusing on?
Well, first up, this is what we have been talking on Friday as well. The finance minister met the public sector banks and a lot of important statements actually came out of it. Now, they're looking to form a committee under the PNB chairman to set up a AMC that will manage these stressed assets. They also say, the finance minister also says that it's too early to decide whether the government is looking to infuse fresh money into the banks this financial year. Regarding the power sector, he mentions that they will discuss with the power sector minister what happens, because remember, there was an important order that came out from Allahabad High Court. As far as the IBC framework is concerned, he said that the government has no role to play and the bankers will be allowed to take its due course. Now, on ICICI Bank, importantly, the finance minister says that the law of land will take its own course, and as the stakeholder, they are not concerned and they see no reason to be concerned. Now, this is important, Nigel, because remember, there are reports from PTI suggesting that SEC is actually looking into ICICI Bank and Chandra Kochar. Remember, SEC is the regulator in US, so this is an important bit and we'll keep tracking that. But other than that, TCS will be in focus because the promoter Tata Sons has created a pledge for 1% equity there. Let's see whether the street brushes this off as business as usual or takes note of that. Other than that, again, something that CNBC TV18 has been alerting you, that Max Life has actually walked out of the IDBI Federal Reserve Insurance stake sale. They've decided not to consider this acquisition opportunity and they have shelved their acquisition as well as the fundraising proposal. Fortis will be in focus because for whatever it's worth, there is a board meeting meeting today to discuss the earnings. Inox Wind will see a red tick today because the statutory auditors there have resigned. One more exit coming from the auditors. And talking about exits, the CFO of Shoppers Stop has also resigned. We have seen a lot of high-level movement in Shoppers Stop of late, so that will be in focus. PNB, wherein they have initiated the process to divest stake in PNB Housing Finance. NATCO, because they have launched one of the injections. IVRCL will be in focus because they have received expression of interest from a few applicants for their companies, so that will be in focus. And lastly, Wellspun Corp, they have bagged one of the orders in the US, so let's see how that one reacts to, Nigel.
Wow, Anisha, you catch your breath, and thanks so much for giving us all the trade cues as well as all the stocks we should be focusing on. But on that note, let's slip into a short break. Up next, the government sets up a new panel to look at the possibility of creating an asset management company to fast-track the NPA resolutions. Well, Finance Minister Piyush Goyal met India's top public sector bankers in Mumbai in order to take stock of the NPA problems that are plaguing the sector. One of the key decisions taken at the meeting was setting up a new committee under the chairmanship of Sunil Mehta, that's the non-executive chairman of Punjab National Bank. Now, this committee will look at the possibility of creating an asset management company to fast-track the resolution of big-ticket bad loans. The committee will submit its report in the next 2 weeks.
A committee has been formed under the chairmanship of Mr. Sunil Mehta, non-executive chairman of Punjab National Bank, which over the next 2 weeks will come out with their recommendations of a suggestion that was deliberated in great detail amongst the bankers today, who believe that it may be worth considering to set up an asset reconstruction company and or an asset management company for faster resolution of stressed assets which have multiple banks involved in these accounts. State Bank, I believe, shared their experiences in the morning amongst the bankers, and there was discussion amongst the bankers about it. The government of India is not going to micromanage what the bankers should do. We have again and again held the view that we believe in autonomy of the banks, and the banks will have to take the final call if at all they have to or they wish to. I think ICICI Bank is a good bank. It is it has very robust processes, and there is no cause for concern for any of the stakeholders of ICICI Bank per se. As far as the law is concerned, the law of the land will take its own course, and the processes are already going on both internally in ICICI and externally, which will finally come out with their findings.
Well, Ritu Singh was tracking the meeting, and she's here with all the takeaways. Ritu.
Interim Finance Minister Piyush Goyal held a meeting with public sector bank chiefs in Mumbai for the very first time. And according to the finance minister, on the agenda were issues like stronger risk governance, globalizing Indian banks and improving credit flow. But besides that, the important announcement made by the finance minister was that there would be a committee that will be set up headed by the Punjab National Bank chairman Sunil Mehta that would look into the idea of creating an asset management company or an asset reconstruction company to help resolve India's stressed asset problem. He indicated that this committee will come back with a final report in the next 2 weeks on the feasibility of such a structure and what the capital requirements and other modalities of this ARC or AMC will be. He also did indicate that NIIF could perhaps be a part of the equity support, if at all required, for this structure. Besides this, he also indicated that banks have indicated the need, to set up an oversight committee with external experts to expedite the decision-making process in these banks, whether it's NPA management, whether it's credit flow. Also, when questioned several times on consolidation within these public sector banks, the finance minister seemed to indicate that the government wants to keep an arm's length distance and leave it up to the banks to decide whether or not they want to consolidate. But our sources within, the banking industry that were also part of meeting indicated that banks seem very keen on the idea of consolidation at this point of time. State Bank of India, in fact, was also, who was part of the meeting, made a presentation on its own experience with the merger, and that was shared with all of the other banks that were present in meeting. Besides this, the finance minister also made his comments on ICICI Bank controversy, where he said that law would take its own course and did not offer any comment on why, the government nominee was absent from the bank's board meetings.
Well, Ritu Singh also spoke to Sunil Mehta, the non-executive chairman of PNB and chairman of SBI, Rajnish Kumar. Let's listen in to what they had to tell us.
We have to find out-of-the-box creative solutions for dealing with the stress assets for ready resolution because, let's face it, I think by putting or moving them towards NCLT is not the right solution for en masse sort of they're going into the NCLT. So the banks have to figure out how can they resolve those issues well before they sort of go into the NCLT. Are we a capital short country?
Of course we are, sir.
Well, in what ways?
Let's talk about public sector banks.
Well, that's, the capital moves into all those where there's adequate return on capital. So we obviously have to make an entity which is sort of going to provide an adequate return on capital. So I don't agree with you that we are a capital short country. We need to use our capital far more effectively.
There is a need for scale. The banking is too fragmented. And we shared our own experience and how it has helped the bank. So this is some sort of a food for thought. Nothing beyond that.
Yes, sir. But given that the DFS was in the room, is there any keenness shown by other banks to, sort of copy the model that you've done or take some experiences from it?
That is after sharing of our experience and listening to it. Now it is up to the banks that what do they do.
Well, time to slip into a short break. Up next, Fortis is going to be in focus today. We'll tell you what are the triggers for the stock.